Do the thing now. Do the thing, do the thing, do the thing now. Do it, do it, do it. Do the thing now. Do the thing. Do the thing now. Smash that like button. Go smash that like button. Go and smash that like button. And super chats are welcome. Yeah, they're welcome. Yeah, they're welcome. Smash the like button. Smash the like button. Smash the like button. Smash the like button. Smash that like button. Super chats are welcome, y'all. Smash that like button. Super chats are welcome, y'all. Do the thing. Do the thing, y'all. Do the thing. Yeah, do the thing now. Do the thing. Do the thing now. Do the thing. Do the thing, y'all. Smash it. The like button. Smash it. Smash the like button. Smash it, smash it, smash it. Smash the like button. Are you doing it? You doing it? And super chats are welcome. Smash, smash, smash the like button, smash, smash, smash that like button. Do the like button, do the crazy like button. Smash, 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 smash the like button. And super chats are welcome, 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 welcome. Super chats are welcome, they're welcome, welcome, welcome. Super chats are welcome, they're welcome, welcome, welcome. Super chats are welcome, they're welcome, welcome, welcome. News for the 99. News for the 99. Smash it, the like button. Smash, smash, smash it. Smash it, the like button. Smash, smash.
That was Ron singing, by the way. Uh-oh, Ron, you're frozen. What happened? Ron? Okay, so we lost Ron, I think. Well, hello, everybody. While we wait to get Ron back in here, I guess singing broke his internet. Today is Thursday. It's January 12th, 2023. There are lots of things to talk about today. Some bad, some worse, some good. I am in a tent. No, I'm not in a tent today. There's no rain. So while we wait for Ron to get back on, I want to talk a little bit about mental health crisis and the LAPD, because this is something that has happened repeatedly and it's happened across the country with other police departments. I think we are at a point where it's not controversial to state that the police department is not prepared to handle a mental health crisis, that generally when they do, things go terribly wrong, many times resulting in not only injury to these folks, but absolute death, as we've seen this week with Keenan. And it's time to reevaluate how we do that, right? So I think that these things should be pulled away from the police department, and a mental health crisis team should respond to these measures. And I'd like to know what other people think of that in the chat if you guys want to. I upgraded to a hut. All joking aside, I'd like to hear what other people think of that, because I don't think what we're doing now is working. You know, I think Keenan is absolutely the victim of murder at this point. We're going to show the body cam footage if you have not seen it yet. It's pretty disturbing, or at least part of it. You know, the officer tased him over and over again, and they had the taser gun on his back and pressed into his skin with it just going full blast. And obviously this can cause injury, cardiac arrest, which is what happened. And it was unnecessary at that point. He was on the ground and handcuffed. But before that, it shouldn't have even got to that level, in my opinion. If you see somebody that's having a mental health crisis, we should have a response team that can come in there and handle it and do something about it. He could have been talked off the ledge. He could have been dealt with in a humane fashion. But having the police come in and do that seems really terrible. The internet is not wrong. Song proof. Exactly. Well, okay, so I don't know if he's coming back here or not. In the meantime, Colin, why don't we fire up some of that body cam footage? So if you have not seen this, it is disturbing. If you don't want to see it, kind of close your eyes for a second. But I do think we need to know what happened, and it's important to see what happened in order to have a real discussion about what happens next.
Yeah, stop it right now. Turn over. Turn over, I'm gonna tase you. Turn over or I'm gonna tase you. Turn over, I'm gonna tase you.
Yes. I can't.
Watch your elbow, partner.
You're trying to do it for me. You're trying to do it
Stop
for
it.
me.
Stop it or I'm gonna tase you. Okay, stop it or I'm gonna tase you. Stop it or I'm gonna tase you. Stop resisting.
Please.
Stop resisting.
Please. Please. Please.
I'm gonna tase him. I'm gonna tase him.
You're trying to kill me. You're trying to kill me. Give me low.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
Yes, sir.
Don't resist.
No.
Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
Okay.
Stop it.
Help.
Stop
Help,
it.
please. Help.
Do not
I'm not
move.
resisting. I'm not resisting.
Do not move.
Okay.
If not, I'm gonna tase you again.
Okay.
Okay, I got one.
Okay. Help me. Okay.
Here, hold on. Stop it. Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
So it's pretty disturbing stuff. I want to mention that the taser policy that the LAPD has is pretty vague. It doesn't say that there's a limit in the number of times an officer can tase someone, but it does advise that they should not do repeated and or simultaneous activations that could cause injury, which is, I think, what we see here. So my opinion is this was entirely out of policy. We'll see what happens next. I do want to put up on the screen Karen Bass, who is the mayor of Los Angeles, newly elected. She put out a statement yesterday, and I do want to read some of that. She says full investigations are underway, and I pledge that the city's investigations into these deaths will be transparent and will reflect the values of Los Angeles. I will ensure that the city's investigations will drive only toward truth and accountability. Furthermore, the officers involved must be placed on immediate leave. No matter what these investigations determine, however, the need for urgent change is clear. We must reduce the use of force overall, and I have absolutely no tolerance for excessive force. We must also lead our city forward, finally, on the mental health crisis that has been allowed to grow, fester, and cause so much harm to individual Angelenos, their families, and our communities. Especially as a former healthcare professional, I am deeply troubled that mental health experts were not called in, even when there was a documented history of past mental health crisis. When there is no immediate risk to others, law enforcement must not be the first responder when someone is experiencing a mental health crisis. I believe officers and Angelenos agree on this. I think they probably do too. Tragically, this is a national crisis, and in reviewing a sample of incidents in which people died during encounters with police as part of my legislative work in Congress, my office found that a third or more of the people involved were experiencing a mental health crisis. It is time that proven reforms are universally implemented and accelerated within LAPD. Los Angeles must lead nationally on mental health and use of force reform. I appreciate Chief Moore's decision to release the footage today. Policy allows up to 45 days before footage of use of force incidents is released, but I believe the Los Angeles Police Department must be as transparent as possible and as expeditiously as possible. Once again, my heart breaks for the families and loved ones who are experiencing such a tragic crisis. All right, so that's where we're at with that. Keenan was an English teacher. He was well loved by his students, by all accounts. There is going to be a vigil for him in Venice on Saturday afternoon that is being promoted by BLM Los Angeles. I will go and get some film on that. But clearly, this is just one more event in a series of events that is going to push us towards reform, I hope, because these folks are not capable of handling adequately to a health crisis, and this is the outcome of that, and it's tragic. Okay, still wondering where Ron is. I don't know if he's still having problems with his webcam or his internet, so let's just keep going, and when he can join us, he can join us. Next up, I think we're going to be talking about the SCOTUS decision with Glacier Northwest. So if you haven't been paying attention to this, this is went to the SCOTUS this week. It is a union rights situation. I actually listened to the oral arguments from start to finish, and I'm going to go through some of my notes on this. So how it got to SCOTUS is the state of Washington dismissed a tort claim. So basically the company was suing the Teamsters union for property damage. What led up to this is the Teamsters went on strike, and when they did go on strike, the cement trucks were driven back to the property, and they went on strike. But they did try to preserve the condition of the cement. They left the drums rotating. So at that point in time, the management had a choice. They could either drive the cement trucks to the location for them to dump the cement, or they could, dispose of it there at their facility. It is my understanding that they do dispose of excess cement all the time at the facility, so they do have the ability to do that. But the fact that the workers drove the trucks back and left the drums going means that they did not, in my point, have negligence as far as duty of care. They obviously cared that the cement trucks were not destroyed. So what is at base of the argument for the property isn't the cement trucks, but rather the fact that the company had to dump the cement and then pay for it to be hauled out. Ron, are you back?
I'm back. My internet, as soon as the song ended, my internet just went.
Bro, you broke the internet.
I broke the internet. They were like, you're not allowed to sing along with the intro music ever again. If you do that again, we're just the internet gods were just like, no, too much smashing the like button encouragement. We can't have that. You got to mix it up. It was literally, because I was just like, I don't know if people heard it, but I was like, so why aren't we live yet? And then all of a sudden I realized my internet was just over. And I was like, oh God, what's going on? And so hopefully it's not, hopefully it's okay throughout the show.
Wonky. You seem okay right now. If not, we'll carry on without you. So I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to the Keenan Anderson story. I showed the body cam footage, and I discussed mental health as being a problem where we have to replace LAPD responding to these calls. Not just the LAPD, any police department. It makes absolutely no sense that law enforcement is tasked with dealing with these crises. They don't know how to handle them, and they generally handle them poorly, and somebody's either injured or killed, and it's totally unacceptable.
Well, I mean, I didn't get to watch. I watched the footage prior. I didn't get to watch the footage live with everybody, but I watched it on my own. And it was very difficult to watch. You watch police literally murder a man who was begging for his life. He was begging for his life. They murdered him. It takes a lot to tase a person to death, as you saw, and they tased this man to death. There's so many questions in this particular case, because you kind of wonder, did they know who his family was? I mean, he has, I believe it's his cousin, is that correct? Who is one of the founders?
Yeah, I did not mention that. That's interesting that you're bringing that up. It didn't occur to me that could have been any sort of motivation or retaliation. I don't think that these officers knew, but his cousin is one of the founders of BLM Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, you can't help but wonder. I mean, who knows? But you can't help but wonder. And another thing, I can say this on a personal level. the man was involved in a car accident.
Right.
Keenan Anderson was involved in a car accident. When you like, I was in a bad car accident in 2013. And when that happens, and it happened to me, for a lot of people, you have a moment where you're kind of in shock and where you can't really compose yourself, which I think was what was happening with this man. He was saying, "Help me, help me." He was in shock because he was in a bad accident. That happened to me.
Yeah.
I not.
We might have. We're losing you a little bit.
I think I'm here. Are
You're
you
back
losing
again.
me again?
No,
All
you
right.
went and came back. I think you have wonky internet today.
Something weird is going on today. I don't know why. I mean, it just started. Go figure. But yeah. But so I was in a really bad accident. I mean, it's a day of my life I'll never forget. And there was a period of time where I could not, like, I just didn't have it together. I was panicking, and I was just like, oh my God, because like so many thoughts are going through your head. You just saw your life flash before your eyes. And when it first happened, I got out of the car and I didn't know what to do. I was just kind of waving my arms. Finally, the guy who hit me came over to me and he's like, dude, get out of the street. And I'm like, what happened? And he's like, I don't know. I mean, we were both kind of in shock. And, you know, at one point I just kind of couldn't really, I just didn't have it under control. It's almost like, you know, if you don't kind of catch yourself, you could have a panic attack. I'm sure some people do. I didn't,
no,
fortunately.
That's fair. No, that is fair.
But I was not together. And the cop in my situation did what you were supposed to do. He called me. He said, sir, you need to calm down. He said, sir, if I feel like you're not, like, if I feel like you need to, I'm going to have to put you in an ambulance. And I said, give me a second. I caught my breath. I settled down. But
what, you settled down?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I just kind of got it together, but
you.
I mean, seriously though, like
people have different reactions to stressful situations. Yeah,
well, no, it's not just that, but I wonder if
have never been a death sentence. It's just insane.
No, I mean, well, that's the thing. If we're being very honest with the world we're living, I wonder what my experience would have been like if I wasn't white.
Right. No,
I wonder how they would have treated me if I wasn't white. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe that was just, you know, like the cop would have done the same no matter what. Who knows? But you can't help wonder, gee, if I wasn't white, I wonder if I would have been treated the same way. Because here's someone who it sounds like just went through the same thing I went through years ago. They killed him. They murdered him. I mean, and I don't know if you went through Karen Bass's statement on the matter.
I did. I read
well,
it.
You know, it sounds nice, but again, she does not favor defunding the police. She is all about putting more officers out there. She's been no thorn in that side whatsoever.
To be fair and charitable to Karen, she does favor creating a mental health crisis response team to replace where the LAPD would call up the mental health crisis response team to come in and deal with things like this. So, no, she doesn't want to defund the police department necessarily, but she does want to add. She does want to add this other thing, which I think would be a step in the right direction.
I mean, hopefully, I'll believe it when I see it. And also, honestly, I mean, at this point, I still would have concerns because I'd be like, well, would they utilize this properly? Or would they just?
Yeah, no, I know. There's
would the cops just tase somebody to death and then be like, hey, you know, I mean, so. And I think, you know, I mean, we've kind of had this debate before, and I think we should have this extended debate someday for one of the funsies. But this is not something that can be salvaged. Cannot. We need to completely abolish police and start over again. We need to completely
create something new. I don't actually disagree with that. Especially when it comes to the sheriff's department, more so because I think they're even more crazy.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, Tina. Think about just what it means to. All right, so here's something they do all the time in LA, and they do this all across the country. They do sweeps. All right.
Yeah, the sweeps are terrible. They should not be doing that either.
Oh, of course not. But here's what I'm getting at. Think about what it means to order somebody to do that. What you're asking someone to do. You're asking somebody to go and displace a homeless person violently.
I agree.
You're just destroying what little they have.
Yep.
You know, and you have no idea what their situation is. Maybe, you know, maybe they're schizophrenic. Like who knows? And you're just supposed to go in there and just displace them. It is such an inhumane thing to ask of
I
a
agree.
human being.
I agree.
Most people could not even do that. I couldn't do that. You couldn't do that.
No,
And
I mean,
I'm sure there are some cops that they're asked to do that, and they look around and they go, "This is not what I signed up for." Those are the cops who don't last.
you're
So
right. You
who
are
are the
absolutely
cops-
correct on that. Those are the cops that don't last. They're pushed out. They leave. They don't want to do it anymore.
So
who's
let's
left?
be honest.
We are self-selecting for a group of individuals that
Who want to do it?
Who want to do it? Who are probably the
Yes.
worst individuals to do it.
That's the thing. Like when you have a system like that,
Yeah,
the
I
only
agree.
people you're going to get are the people who want to do that. They want to hurt people. They want to kill people. They want an excuse to use their taser on another human being until they're dead. Because that's what that guy wanted.
agree.
That guy wanted to kill that person. That's what
Not-
he wanted to do.
Not to digress to another day, but I have a flashback to Echo Park night when they did that massive sweep of the homeless camp that was there at Echo Park Lake. And there was one officer that I will never, certain things stick in your brain that you've seen in your life and you can just not erase them. They come every now and then. They just flash back. This is
Yeah, I just mentioned my car accident. That was one of them for
okay.
me.
So this is one for me. There was an officer that was in the front of the skirmish line that you could tell he was just itching to beat the crap out of somebody, right? He was like kind of doing this shaky stuff and he was rubbing his baton and the entire time and then he was tapping. Like you watched this guy and you were like, yikes, what is this guy about? And, 10, 15 minutes later, he broke the lens of my camera intentionally. And then later on, he was pushing around like the entire night. He was just a very.
Was that the guy who shoved you?
He broke my camera lens. Yeah.
there
Different
was
guy. Oh, no, not at Roe v. Wade. This was at Echo Park.
Geez, you're just always making friends, huh?
I did.
You're like, no, that was a different
That was
guy.
different.
Then there was a third guy who broke my window. And then there was it's just collect the set.
Collect this.
I'm glad you laugh about this stuff. Otherwise, everyone would think I'm a huge dick.
I just see it as an occupational hazard. But on the
I
flip
hear you.
side, you're right about like there are other cops that have come to me and given me information that's been very helpful. But you know what? They all leave the department. You're correct. They don't want to be around these guys. I remember one officer told me once he had come down. He worked in Michael Moore's office downtown. And he had mentioned to me that he was having lunch with a black officer one afternoon, and this other officer comes over and is like, "When are we going to have White History Month?" What is the point of that except to be fucking racist, right? It's appalling. It's absolutely appalling.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, and again, like that's the system. So it's like you attract
messed
people who want to cause violence. You attract people who are white supremacists. You attract Nazis. You attract
And you
KKK
push the
members.
other
You
guys
attract
out.
other gang members.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like if you go in with good intentions, you're out really
You
quick.
leave. Yeah, you are.
I mean, I talked to a guy
I laugh
once.
because it's true. It is absolutely true.
No, I mean, and that's why I say I'm like, look, I think maybe at some point in the 90s, reform was a possibility. That ship has sailed. It's over. It's way too far gone.
I agree.
You got to just start over again.
We've improved massively from the Daryl Gates era, but the fact that we're still here having many of these conversations over and over again is really problematic. And obviously, whatever is there is so deep-seated. And I think part of it, too, I talked to another officer that was working in reform is his thing. He was writing a PhD on it. One of the things that he mentioned that I thought was interesting was that they are intentionally recruiting ex-military guys because they don't really have to train them in their opinion. I'm like, but my thing is response to that is like, oh, but you do. You're now putting somebody out on the street that views all of the citizens as enemy combatants and not citizens. Like
They're
really,
used to a war zone.
it's really fucking problematic. It's like the worst kind of person. Like, no, this person probably has PTSD on top of it. The smallest thing might trigger them. So yeah, the way they view all of these things is just, from the outside looking in, you're like, how is that not obvious that that's a problem? But
Well, and just the job itself is so freaking absurd that there's this highly undertrained, underscreened person with a badge and a gun and impunity that is expected to know what to do in any given situation. If we lived in a better world, we would have traffic, like not just traffic patrol, like they want to give you a ticket, but people who specialize in this type of thing that,
And that's
hey,
what I
when
agree.
someone's in an accident, they might
Right.
be like, they might have a moment of shock. And here's how you kind of talk them down. Here's how you
Right.
settle them. Here's how you know if they're going to have a panic attack or not, or if they
Right.
just need you to kind of like encourage them to breathe, like
Yeah.
whatever.
Instead of treating everybody like
Instead
a
of
criminal.
tasing them. I
know,
mean, it's just, but I think
And,
there was.
We
yeah.
didn't play the beginning part of the body cam footage, but you see when the officer first pulls up, you can tell he's having some sort of panic. He's having something going on. There's something definitely, it's obvious.
Yeah.
And so the officer's telling him to get against the wall and standing. And he's like, no, I need to be somewhere where people can see me. So you could also see that he's like, no, you're an officer. I'm black. I need people to see me. And what if you're going to do something? He's afraid, right? On top of it because of the way he's initially approached. Yeah, no, 100%.
And watching that, and again, like with the story I just told you guys of what I went through, that went through my mind. That very thing when he said, I need to be where people can see me. And I thought to myself, yeah, when I was in my accident in 2013 and I was panicked because I had just had a terrible accident, I didn't have to worry about that. I didn't have to think, oh, wait, it's a cop. You know, I didn't have to think like that. You know, that's what it's like being black in America. That he had to think about that. I didn't. You know, I mean, it's just horrible.
I agree. So there's going to be, and I also mentioned this, there's going to be a protest on Saturday. BLM LA's sponsoring a protest, setting it up. It's going to be on the site there where Keenan was killed. So I'll go and cover that on Saturday. So we'll have footage from that. They're going to do a candlelight vigil. And we'll see what happens next, you know, whether these officers get disciplined or what. But something needs to happen.
I hope so. I mean, it's like, you know, these things happen nonstop. I mean, it's to the point where sometimes you'll be talking about one shooting, someone will reference another one because they don't even keep track of all of them. I mean, I remember one time I was talking about the Anthony McLean incident in Pasadena. Somebody was defending another cop shooting, and I'm like, no, that's not even. That's a different shooting. First of all, you're wrong about that one too, but this is a different one. So you need to, you know, you dip the wrong piece of propaganda. But so, I mean, it's the system is just rotten to the core, and it just needs to, we need to just start all over again. And we need to completely rethink what it means to have law enforcement in our lives and how that should be conducted and the roles that people should play and what that looks like.
I mean, the thing that, not to like make this entire show about law enforcement, but you know, the one thing we need law enforcement to do is the thing that the smallest thing that they do, and it just doesn't make sense. Like, we need them to solve murders, to solve rapes.
They never do.
They
never do. They solve less than 2%.
You look at the crime solve rates for some of these, and they are quite low. It just doesn't make sense. Anyway, on that note, we should probably move on to Glacier Northwest. Which, so I was about to play, I was sort of giving the background on how this case came to SCOTUS. So basically, they are asking, Washington State dismissed the lawsuit that Glacier Northwest brought against the Teamsters, and basically saying it needed to go to the labor board. That was their jurisdiction, which personally, on a sidebar, I think that's the correct ruling.
They're 100% right.
Yeah.
Any egregious behavior, well, quote unquote, egregious behavior, which in this case, we'll get into it. There was no egregious behavior.
I agree.
But any case where like the question of quote unquote egregious behavior is present, the labor board decides that. So the Washington State Court was 100% right that they're like, this is not, you got to take this to the labor board.
Right.
So, and by the way, you don't have much here, just so you know. But the Supreme Court, as anti-worker as they are, you know, we'll see.
What I think is really problematic, and I want to clarify this because I think this is far more detrimental than ruling on whether union members can strike or not. I think they're trying to chill and scare workers. Glacier Northwest. So this case really doesn't revolve around the right to strike, right? It revolves around whether individual workers can be held liable or responsible for property damage that might be caused during the strike. So if you tell a worker that they are personally liable for property damage that might occur during a strike, they're going to be afraid to go on strike. And I think that's the point, right? This is why big business would want SCOTUS to rule on this. It would be a huge win for them for that reason alone. So the case basically revolves around, I started talking about the cement trucks. So the Teamsters go on strike. The cement trucks are brought back to their facility. And with intention, knowing that there was cement in them, the workers left the drums spinning. At that point, the management had a choice to make. They could either continue to deliver the cement at the locations that they were out to go to, or they could dump the cement and deal with it that way, which they dump excess cement every day, is my understanding. This is not unheard of. If they don't use all the cement at the site and it comes back, they have to deal with the excess cement there at the facility. So
No,
those
that
were the
is
options.
correct. I've seen The Sopranos.
So yeah.
Sorry, continue.
So they didn't no cement trucks were damaged. The management decided to dump the cement and have it hauled away. There's a cost to that, but you know, that's whatever. That's just the cost of doing the business. Maybe you should just pay your workers better. Isn't that the point? So really what this is revolving around is that right there, the cement. So now we heard arguments coming from both groups of judges, the liberal judges and the conservative judges. At one point, John Roberts, I quote something along the lines, is it okay for the milk to spoil, meaning the cement, but not okay to shoot the cow, meaning the cement truck, right? Because right now, I guess the way the law is framed, the argument is about whether or not spoiled goods like spoiled cheese, spoiled lettuce, this stuff spoils because the workers are not available to handle those goods. That is considered an okay thing to happen because it's not done by intention with the workers, right? The workers aren't intentionally destroying property. It's being destroyed by virtue of there just being a strike and they're not present to work, right? So that's the difference between like that and say vandalizing property. Like if I go back to my old workplace and I intentionally destroy the machinery or cause major property damage in that way, that's an entirely different argument. And just everybody present seemed to agree that that was the case, right? So we're arguing at this point over what the cement constitutes.
They're arguing over what egregious behavior, quote unquote, is. And yeah, like the analogy you gave is perfect. I would say to the milk example, what happened here, I mean, keep in mind, by leaving the trucks running, that was an act of good faith. They didn't really have to do that.
I agree with you.
They did that to help the companies. And they said, basically, here it goes. So basically, in the milk analogy, they took the milk and put it in the fridge and said, hey, it's in the fridge. It's up to you now.
What happens next is up to you.
What happened next is up to you because we're going on strike. So the company could have drank the milk. They could have sold the milk. They could have made macaroni and cheese. They could have made a cake. Instead, they let the milk spoil. And then they said, well, this is your fault. Like, no. They could have left the milk on the shelf if they wanted to. They put it in the fridge as an act of good faith. And here's what you guys do anyway.
Right. So that brings me to my next thing that I wrote down. Reasonable precautions to prevent property damage. Were those made? I agree with you. I think yes, because they left the drums running. They didn't, there was a choice that had to be made by management at that point.
I think they went above and beyond. I think they went above and beyond. If they wanted to destroy
the trucks, they would have turned off the drums. The cement would have hardened inside the trucks, and every single one of those trucks would have been permanently damaged. So, interestingly enough, Kagan, Brown, Sotomayor, all pressed on this as much. And I think the reason wasn't necessarily that they thought that there was negligence done on behalf of the workers. I think it was they pressed just because they wanted people to be really clear on what the arguments were. I would also say that Alito and Kavanaugh didn't ask any questions. They were silent, as were most of the conservative judges. I was not able to get a read on what their opinion was on this because they were just asking questions and not really giving a reaction to what was said. So there's something called a Garmin preemption. And again, I'm not a legal scholar, so an attorney could probably explain this better. But when does the state court preempt the federal labor law and the NLRB? So this is the second argument that I think is at the center of this court case. When is it okay for the state court for them to preempt what the NLRB does traditionally? Obviously, the liberal judges are basically saying, no, that's the job of the NLRB. And they are an expert in this area. They handle these cases on the regular. They know the laws inside and out. And if you're unsatisfied with the outcome of your NLRB case, you can then go to the state court. So I thought that was a fair read. So on that note, there's two clips I want to play so people can get a little bit more about what we're talking about. This first clip starts, it's the one that starts at 4:58. Colin, if we can play that. This is Sotomayor talking to the attorney for Glacier Northwest.
I guess I'm not sure I understand your answer to the question. Whether you think that your test captures conduct that the reasonable precautions test does not. So in your latter half of the answer, you suggested yes. I took the former half to say no. So maybe I was just misunderstanding. But does it go further? Does it capture conduct that you think the board's test does not?
So it's hard for me to think of in my head a set of facts that would be captured by our test, but not their test. So in that sense, I do think that our test is a subset of their test. But look,
it's a subset of their test.
I think so, but you might be able to come up with a set of facts where there's not overlap. I haven't been
so
able
if
to think of
that's
one
the
yet.
case, why shouldn't we use the doctrine, the standard, the words that have always been used in this sphere before?
I think the main reason is that when you've got something as clear as this, something as egregious as intentional property destruction, it's important to take that clear category of misconduct off the table. Look, we're dealing with ongoing negotiations here, and the parties need to know the rules of the road. What are legitimate tactics in the course of a lawful negotiation? I worry that something as nebulous as reasonable precautions doesn't really give the parties the guidance they need.
Mr. Francisco, I thought that reasonable precautions was fairly clear. The one items that the board has said are not covered are those where an individual, a union member, is acting in a way that any citizen in the same position would have been held responsible for. So if you libel somebody, it's not just you, but any other citizen with no legal obligation to you would be liable. Similarly, no person who's on strike or not can impose intentionally emotional distress. All right? Those are things that categorically we say can't be arguably protected. But when it comes to destruction of property, I always thought you needed a duty that you're breaching. If an employee goes on strike, their duty to you has ended. I can walk by your plant and the parking lot and see those trucks running. I have no obligation to tell you there's cement in there. I have no obligation to move the truck. I have no obligation to do anything. That's what the employees at that moment, they went on strike. What the government is saying, however, is intentional destruction of property means that I'm taking an affirmative act, not just merely the property perishing on its own.
So I think she's doing a really good job of clarifying this point of what is intentional property damage and one is just something that happens by virtue of the workers being on strike. And these are two different things. So Glacier Northwest is arguing that the fact that these workers, my understanding at least, is the fact that these workers took the cement trucks out full of cement to go to location and then went on strike after the fact somehow represents intentional property destruction.
That's what they're
destruction. On their behalf. So I thought her points were really good. The second clip
and his claim is absolutely ridiculous. What the workers made an act of good faith, and that's how they get repaid for it. They do an act of good faith. They leave the trucks running for the company. They didn't even have to do that. They did it. They're under no obligation, as she pointed out. They're under no obligation at that point. And
they're on strike.
They're on strike.
If they wanted to damage the trucks, they would have. I'm
just going to reiterate here.
Going. So I agree with you there.
The Supreme Court has no business hearing this.
This case,
the Supreme Court has no business being involved here. So what I think is really going on. I think that we are seeing the biggest workers' uprising that we have seen in nearly 100 years. And I think the powers that be know that. So they're going to see if their buddies at the Supreme Court can help out. Because protocol was not followed here. They know there is a notoriously anti-worker Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is a scam and a political football to begin with. We all know this. So we're watching this kangaroo court in session. And I only hope that there's enough public outcry that it has to be stopped and that they follow the proper protocol, which is go to the labor board, which is this labor board is worth the salt. they'll favor it in honor of the workers because the workers didn't do anything freaking wrong. And guess what? You have a constitutional right to strike. So they're not going to go after that right specifically. They're not going to go after that right head on. They're going to try to beat around it by saying, okay, you can technically go on strike, but now your company,
Right.
the company can sue you. So if you want to go on strike, you have to worry about that now. You have to prepare for the strike, which in the United States, striking is incredibly hard. Why? Because we don't have living wages and healthcare is tied to a job and unions have been defanged for 60 plus years. So you take all that and now you add another layer on, and that other layer is you better be ready to pay lawyer fees because they can sue you now because egregious behavior just means anything. You know, because here you have a situation where it was actually the opposite of egregious behavior. They did something for the company they didn't even have to do, and the company is still trying to stick it to them.
Right. Well, okay.
They're
So,
a
but
bunch
the
of
company,
capitalist criminals.
Yeah. Okay. So just to clarify too, just the company's position is that if they really weren't being egregious to begin with, they never would have taken the trucks. They would have just got on strike that morning without taking the trucks full of cement out. So their argument is that that should not have happened to begin with. I would say it's the union's position. They're not arguing in this in court per se, but I would understand why a union would decide to hit them at a moment that it kind of like showed that these workers were essential to the job, to the business, to the profits. So it would make sense to me that they kind of took that middle ground. I don't think they should be punished for it, and I certainly don't think there was intentional property damage there. So the next clip I want to play, this is Judge Brown talking to the Teamsters lawyer.
I guess I'm not sure I understand what you mean when you talk about the distinction. I mean, the allegation in this case, and you could imagine even hypothetically, is that the union certainly has the right to walk away.
Yes.
And if they're walking away, and their responsibilities involve perishable goods
Yes.
that as a result of their walking away are going to spoil,
Right.
then that's an incidental harm that is occurring. But you can also imagine a situation in which the union says, we have evidence that we're going to time our walking away
Yes.
at the very point in which we've poured the thing that can't be recovered, because if we do it at that point, we're going to destroy the machines, and that is our intent. I don't understand how that is protected and why that isn't any, the same as the arsonist who says, I'm going to walk away, but as I do, let me strike the match and burn down the factory.
So what's always been critical to the board's cases is the extent of the harm. So the aggravated nature of the harm, the foreseeable imminence of the harm, not the intent.
But I'm asking what should be. I appreciate that it hasn't been clear, but that I think is part of the problem. So in terms of the logic of this, shouldn't the line be drawn around the intent in the sense of, is the union engaging in conduct for the purpose of destroying the property of the factory, or is the union just striking, and if some of the property gets damaged because they're walking away, that's incidental, that's totally protected?
So that should not be the test for two reasons, a doctrinal and a statutory. So let me give you the statutory first. Congress in Section 151, the very first section of the Act, observed that strikes generally have the, quote, intent or necessary effect, close quote, of causing a variety of economic harm, including a stoppage of the flow of raw materials and interruptions of operations. And certainly Congress was aware of perishables like cheese and milk and concrete in 1935.
Okay, but that's still not getting to me. Yes, economic harm is being inflicted when you stop work.
Intentionally.
You intentionally stop the work. But the question is, can you do something that actually intends to affect the property directly, to make it the property unsalvageable? We can't get new people in here as a result of the strike and pick up where we left off because you've literally burned down the factory. We agree that you can't burn down the factory, right?
We absolutely agree you cannot burn down the factory.
All right.
You cannot smash things.
So I think her intent here is to really establish a clear definition of what is property damage as a consequence of the strike where it wasn't intentional, and then what is, intentional vandalism of something of that sort. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think that, I understand what the lawyer was saying, the points he was bringing up, and I think he was right on. But, the way I see it, and again, I'm not an attorney, so I'm hoping he's a couple plays ahead of me, but
Yeah.
but I hope so. But I would have been like, look, even by like the standards you set up, they still pass. They did not, quote unquote, burn down the factory. That didn't happen. They did
Right.
not have the intention to destroy anything. They walked away. And yes, when you strike, you are intending to commit economic harm. That's the leverage you
point.
have.
Yes,
Hey,
that's the
because
leverage
I'm
you have,
on
right.
strike, you're facing some consequences. There's your cement trucks. By the way, we left them running as an act of goodwill. We didn't have to do that. If we didn't do that, you would have been worse off. We left them running so that it didn't spoil immediately. They could have handled it. The company could have handled it. They chose not to. If they really wanted to, quote unquote, burn down the factory, they could have dumped the cement in the offices or something like that. They could have put it in someone's sandwich. There's plenty of things they could have frickin' done if they had the intent to destroy things. And yes, that is different. Then you cross into the line of egregious behavior, which is not permitted. You can't, if you go on strike, you have the right to strike. You don't have the right to, like just burn down a building. You don't have the right to, if you're striking at Starbucks and someone walks into the Starbucks and you beat the crap out of them, you can't do that. There's a clear defined difference. And in this case, it's so abundantly apparent there was no egregious behavior whatsoever. They are grasping whatever is further than a straw. That's what they're grasping for. They're reaching for, they're going beyond the straw. They're not even close to the straw. It is absurd that a court is hearing this right now. This should have been brought to the labor board. The labor board should have laughed. Use the issuance from the company.
Agree with that. So
yeah, the labor board should have laughed it out of the office.
Well,
and it should have been dead.
There is something pending with the NLRB. I'm not sure what the details are on that, but
still the Supreme Court shouldn't be anywhere near here. The Supreme Court, this is a
they could kick
scam.
it back to the state. They could just kick it back to the state. I don't know why they're even hearing it. They shouldn't be hearing it, in my opinion, but here we are.
But they're not going to kick it back because the state already did the right thing. The state was like, okay, this is ridiculous. Go to the labor board. And then they got it up to the Supreme Court through a bunch of like nonsense loophole, like whatever, corporate corruption. And, the Supreme Court is gonna freaking rule on this thing that they have no business weighing in on. They have no business being part of it. That's why would you bring the Supreme Court into this? Well, because you know how anti-labor they are, and this is going to set a new precedent that is going to crush workers.
We'll see what happens. I think they are going to rule. My gut is that the reason they took it is to rule on it. Hopefully this ruling is incredibly narrow, but I think the idea that they could make workers liable for any kind of property damage that happens, whether it was intentional or not, is kind of disturbing. That's meant to chill.
It's disturbing.
It's meant to chill workers
beyond disturbing.
Being willing to strike. I 100% agree with you on that. Also, Vivek Suri argued for the United States, presented an amicus brief. My understanding is they wanted it to be kicked back to the state court. I didn't get a chance to really go through that because this is all still breaking today, but we'll keep an eye on it and we'll see what happens and report on any developments that come next.
Yeah, and this goes far beyond just the Teamsters up in Seattle and these cement companies. If they rule on this in favor of the companies,
that's the point, Ron. That's the point, isn't it? My thing is how often have we seen far right entities, whether it's think tanks, wealthy individuals, whatnot, they push for SCOTUS cases to happen, even if they think they might not win them, because they want to change the conversation, because they want to set up, push the Overton window further to the right, because eventually, like with Roe v. Wade, if we keep going 20 years later, maybe we might actually get a win because we
that's exactly what they're doing here.
I agree.
That's exactly what they're doing here. Like, again, and I just want to reiterate it to people, the Supreme Court has no business hearing it. This is a scam. This is a complete corporate scam, and this is what happens when you live in a freaking oligarchy. The Supreme Court reports to nobody. Most of the people on the Supreme Court were not even, like in there due to public opinion. They were placed there by presidents who didn't even win the popular vote. It's a complete scam. It shouldn't exist. It should be abolished along with the cops. And, this is just, this is
abolish everything
so
these days.
absurd. It is so absurd.
I think, listen, in the very least, they should be impeached, several of them, for things that have happened. And also, in the very least, we should get rid of lifetime appointments. This just doesn't make sense.
Just get rid of it. We can have other federal
a high court
courts.
Of some time. Yeah, we could have.
You can have other federal courts that are actual courts. We don't need the Supreme Court. It's a freaking clown show and not a funny one. Get rid of it.
No, it's definitely not funny.
So we'll keep an eye on this, but this is a big one, folks. This is a big one, and this is not good.
No, it's not good. I agree. It's not good. All right. Our next thing is transportation.
Colin, bring up the thing. Oh, yeah.
The thing.
Everything is collapsing. Everything, Tina, is collapsing. So bring
it's
up
very
that
dystopian,
tweet.
yeah.
People waiting for an Amtrak were there for 29 hours.
That's insane.
So a travel nightmare is unfolding right now on Amtrak. Passengers on the auto train have been stuck on board for 29 plus hours, currently sitting in the woods in rural South Carolina. Passengers called the local police saying they're being held hostage. Wait. Can we listen to this thing? Here, scroll down, Colin. Can we listen to it? I actually haven't.
So once again, for those of you that are calling the police, we are not holding you hostage. We are giving you all the information in which we have. We are sorry about the inconvenience. As soon as more information is available, we will let you know shortly. Thank you.
We are not holding you hostage. We're not. Just so you know, we're your friend. We want to have a biscuit. Did you have a biscuit? I know it's been 29 hours.
How is that real?
Have some fruit punch. Are you feeling okay?
God.
We're not holding you hostage. Drink this Kool-Aid. Drink the what's in it?
I
Nothing.
almost have
Just
to
Kool-Aid.
hear that again.
Drink it.
Like, what?
Drink it.
How is that real?
It's real. This is what we're and keep in mind. So you can't take a train. You can't take a plane. I mean, plane travel is literally nuts right now. Gas is through the roof. Groceries are out there. I mean, we're crazy. Here, folks. This is failed state status. We're there. Like we've made it. Like it's collapsing. And that's another reason. It's collapsing. And they know that. So the last thing they want are more striking workers.
Yeah, this is true. Speaking of more striking workers, the nurses reached a deal. So it's not all dark. We have some good news.
It's a little bit of good news. Yeah, we got some good news for you.
So, but this is why strikes are important and why we should not be chilling. Here's the thing. The ability to strike is protected First Amendment free speech.
That's right.
So, that's why they're going after the property damage, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're trying to find a loophole.
We can't get rid of the free speech. Let's just find ways in which we can chill these workers and scare them so that they don't,
make it even harder. But when you strike, that's the only way to get what you want. That is literally the only way to get what you want. You got to go on strike. And sometimes even striking is not enough. But, a lot of times when you strike and you got to go through with it, you can't, we're going to threaten a strike. No, you got to do it. You got to do it. And it's like, and here they did it. And they got a negotiation.
3 days. Only 3 days in. That's pretty good, right?
Only 3 days in. And now they had prior. So my understanding of this, prior they had gotten some wage increases. So this particular strike was more in relation to staffing issues. Which, how does that make you feel, folks? They're not staffing our hospitals properly with nurses. Does that make you feel great? Isn't that good? Your nurse is on like a 48-hour shift. Doesn't that make you feel great?
By herself with no backup.
Not literally that long, I don't think, but yeah, you get the idea.
Crazy. All right, well, let's pull up. You want to pull up the? Yeah,
let's pull it up. They got a victory here, or at least it appears to be a victory.
So the two,
and it only took 3 days.
There we go. The two hospitals. So the agreement includes 170 new nursing positions, which is a 19% increase in pay over the 3-year life of the contract, lifetime health care coverage for eligible retirees, and adding significantly more nurses to the ER. The deals were announced in the early hours Thursday morning at 3 a.m. Eastern for Montefiore and about 30 minutes later at Mount Sinai. The nurses returned to the job for the 7 a.m. shift this morning, Thursday, and Montefiore Medical Center said all surgeries and procedures and outpatient appointments for Thursday and after will proceed as scheduled. Nurses will still need to vote to approve the deal before it is finalized, but the union said the tentative deal will help out more nurses to work and allow patients to receive better care. Through our unity and by putting it all on the line, we won enforceable safe staffing ratios at both Montefiore and Mount Sinai, where nurses went on strike for patient care, the nurses union said in a statement. Today, we can return to work with our heads held high, knowing that our victory means safer care for both patients and more sustainable jobs for our profession. Mount Sinai called the agreement fair and responsible, which is why they didn't agree to it in the first place.
Yeah, right. Which is why they had to be. That's great. I mean, what an unintentional cell phone right there. Like, hey, this is a fair and responsible way to do business. Oh, so you guys did it without being asked? No. They had to go on strike for 3 days. That's if you want us to be fair and responsible, you literally have to go on strike when you're a nurse and people's lives are on the line. You have to go on strike, and then we'll do what we should have done in the first place. Wow. It's amazing. It is amazing the time we're living in right now. This is just, I mean, you could not write this as a dystopian script. It would not get picked up because people would say it's too unrealistic. Frickin' nuts. It is frickin' nuts. And now they're trying to gut your ability to strike because they don't want more victories like the nurses. They don't want to see more victories like that, folks. That's what they do not want. Should we go to some super chats, last announcements / set up right-wing sanity?
We have one more thing we want to play really quickly. The Bloomberg clip from January 11th yesterday. This is a great little clip. It'll take 2 seconds. Just want to bring attention to it. This is basically a healthcare company executive or somebody at JP Morgan that monitors and researches healthcare companies for JP Morgan, I should say. Nervous about having the Democratic Party have a primary. They prefer to have Biden in there as opposed to an actual primary because they might end up with a candidate that's more to the left that supports Medicare for all. So let's go ahead and play this clip real quick.
And then on 2024, how does the outlook around these companies change depending on whether or not the individual running for the Democratic side is Joe Biden?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. It's something we've been talking a lot about is that will President Biden run or not run? I think we're all waiting to hear his decision. If he decides not to run, we know what we're going to get with the Biden administration, right? We know what we've gotten so far. If he decides not to run and it's opened up and there's a primary, you have Democrats that have a tendency to be a little more liberal and more left-leaning and introduce things around Medicare for all, if you remember with Bernie or with Elizabeth Warren in the past. And so, I think for an investor, it's the headline risk, right? I mean, even if we go back and we look at what happened with the Affordable Care Act, not nearly as bad as people had anticipated. But again, that's once we get to the details, the headlines are generally what cause managed care to trade off. So until we know the public policy of how that individual's thinking, it's hard to make a determination. And as you know, investors sell first and ask questions later.
Can I make an observation here? Yes. Let me make a real quick observation. Whenever somebody goes for affirmations all the time, we all do it occasionally, like as an aside. I think it's just like human nature when you're speaking. But whenever you do it constantly, where you're like, well, right? I mean, this, I mean, you know how that goes, right? Usually it's because you're trying to sell some really evil shit, and deep down, you know it. I mean, right? We'd be worried if
the Affordable Care Act wasn't as bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean wasn't it bad? That was a giant handout to healthcare insurers. You guys all made bank on that.
Well, that's why she meant it wasn't as bad. I mean, that's what she meant by not as bad. She's like, we still got money.
What she should have said, it was a genius giant handout to us. We got more money than we got previously because of the mandate.
But she still is, I mean, she's, the investors, Medicare for all. I mean, right? That'd be bad. Everyone would have healthcare. That'd be terrible, right?
We would cut out the middleman that is gouging everybody. It would be horrifying.
So
because they're literally all profiteering off of a healthcare system that doesn't need them. That's the bottom line.
Well, here's the thing. I will say this though, like just as an aside to that, I don't think they have anything to worry about whether Biden runs or not. I mean, if Biden, I think they're going to prop him back up there.
I agree.
if they don't, decide to prop him back up and see if he can remember what he had for breakfast, who are they gonna, what pro Medicare for all possible candidate could there be? I don't think Bernie's gonna run again. I honestly don't think he should. So there's nobody.
There's nobody.
There's nobody.
There's no really strong progressive
they have nothing to worry
leadership,
about.
though. Yeah, I agree.
They have
agree
nothing
here.
to worry about. They're
But
going to
I just found it amusing that they're worried anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes wonder what it would be like spending a day in a person's like their head.
Yeah.
Just like, oh man, if everyone had healthcare, that'd be terrible. Well, why? Because our shareholders would get less. Well, isn't that terrible? No, that's okay, right? No, it's not okay. Well, no, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. There are other ways to make money and sustain yourself as a human, other than denying people care so that they die. That's not an honest way to make a living. I'm sorry. That's not an honest way to make a living. So, but unfortunately for the country and all of us, those people, the investors, they don't have anything to worry about. There's not going to be a pro Medicare for all candidate in 2024, or at least I would be beyond shocked if something crazy happened and there was. It's not going to happen. They're going to prop Rip Van Winkle up there again.
They're gonna
or they're going to try to shove Kamala down everyone's throats. One of the two. That's my guess. Anyway, I don't see anything.
No, I don't disagree.
There might be an outside challenger. There might be some outside challenger. But I don't see it going that far. If we're being real, I mean, it'd be cool if I know some people mentioned Marianne Williamson. I like Marianne Williamson a lot better than Biden. But I don't.
I just don't think she could win the prize. Yeah, I don't see it happening.
I don't think she could, and that's not a bash on her. I don't think anyone could.
No, it's not a bash on her. It's an even harder thing to do when you have a sitting president that's in the same party that would be having the primary. That's just pretty unheard of. So
well, yeah, and dude, if they stop Bernie in his tracks, exactly. They're gonna stop it outside in their tracks too. I mean, if they could stop Bernie, who is already in the Senate at least, of course they're gonna.
And
stop
also
him.
exceedingly popular. Yeah, there's.
Yeah, and exceedingly popular.
I
agree. Shall we super chat announcement it up?
Yes.
So first of all, folks, I do have to say, quick call to action. A little bit of good news. They did renominate Gigi Sohn's nomination to the FCC. She would give us a pro net neutrality FCC. Net neutrality guarantees a free and open internet. Please go to battleforthenet.com and demand they appoint her now. They have the votes. They've been putting this off for 2 years, which is historic. Let's not let them put it off anymore. It's crazy. Go to battleforthenet.com, approve or pressure them to appoint her. It's time. They re-upped their nomination. That's a good thing. We weren't sure they were going to do that, but they re-upped it. The right-wing campaign against her has already started again.
Yeah.
So we got to be loud. Battleforthenet.com. Joe Biden doesn't really care. He doesn't care about net neutrality. Chuck Schumer has a million conflict of interest with big tech. A lot of the Republicans don't like her, so she has a lot of opposition, but the votes are there. Battleforthenet.com. All right. And folks, you can check me out live, ronplacone.com. January 28th, I will be in Tucson. That's a stand-up show and the premiere screening of my short film /pilot Loner. Can't wait for the world to see it. Get tickets now, ronplacone.com. February 10th, April 14th, and May 12th, I'll be at the Glendale Room in Los Angeles, California, working on my 2023 hour. Tickets and all information at ronplacone.com. Robin Bennett, love you guys and your reporting. Thank you so much.
Thank
Robin,
you. Yeah.
There Robin is. Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you for your super chat contribution. You help keep the show on the air. And thank you for those kind words on a Thursday. Tony D, what's up, buddy? Hope to see you in Chicago this year. I've heard about this book. I've never read it, but I'm going to write it down right now.
You know what? I've been wanting to read that. I have not read it.
You're
reminding me about this. Yeah. I should order this right away before I forget. I heard it's very good.
I'm going to use the library. I go for the more economic option, but yeah. The End of Policing by Alex Vitale. I actually use, you know what? I never thought I'd be this guy. But after the lockdown, I started using the Libby app a lot because you couldn't go to the library, and now I use the Libby app all the time. And I love libraries. I love going to my local library. but I don't do it as much, which kind of bums me out a little bit. But the Libby app is just so convenient. Like you can just get.
Do you order the book or pull out the books or whatever, check them out online? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, you should get it. It's an app.
Okay.
So it's called Libby, Libby, and you can either.
Do they mail you the book or how do you get it?
No, Tina, you read it as a digital download.
Oh. Got it. I'm old. I like paper.
No, I'm the same way. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, because I had no choice during the pandemic, I kind of got used to it.
Oh my God. So I moved around too much and my camera's out of focus now.
Oh man. I was going to say you got blurry. Is it just the idea of PDFs makes you fade away? You disappear. You're like, no.
Hang on. You refocus? That didn't help, did it?
No, it did now. You're good now.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. It looks back to normal to me. But yeah, no, it's you can either use it on your Kindle if you have a Kindle, but if you don't, you can just use the app. Like I don't have a Kindle.
Okay.
And yeah, you just check the books
That's
out
cool,
and you
actually.
get them
I
on
didn't
your
know that.
phone.
All right.
And here's the cool thing: it's connected to your actual library. So you actually connect your I have a membership to the Los Angeles Library and the Pasadena Library because I used to live in Pasadena. You connect both library cards and you
cool.
have full access.
Libby? L-A-B-B-Y?
L-I-B-B-Y, yeah.
Okay.
It's just so freaking convenient. I don't know. And yeah, I do love my library though. I really do. But yeah, it's just it's a little too convenient to
Chris
have
is
that.
right. Librarians are the original activists.
I agree. No, I am 100%. And keep in mind, even though Libby is still the library. It's just like a digital tool to access the library. So this is by no means is this a substitute. This is still the library. It's just at your fingertips
No, that's cool.
as opposed to going in. But Nancy Bernard. So yeah, again, that book to reiterate for folks who might not have heard, The End of Policing,
yeah,
by Alex Vitale. I think it's Vitale, right?
Yeah,
Vitale.
so.
I want to say Vitale.
That's how I would pronounce it.
Yeah, Vitale. Nancy Bernard, what's up? It's a perfect afternoon, a sunny day in San Francisco. That's awesome, Nancy. Hope you're staying dry.
Wow, sunny up in San Francisco.
Yeah,
you guys.
Right, I was thinking that too.
There.
They're supposed to get some more, I think. I know some parts of the state are still getting more, but I don't know if we're going to get more.
Cloudy over here. It's cloudy, but no rain today. But
it was sunny earlier.
Such an insane amount of rain over the last 2 days.
I know. Well, I mean, parts of LA got a little flooded. Parts of the state got a little flooded.
Yeah,
Mission Bay and San Diego got flooded. Nancy, but you say it's a perfect afternoon, a sunny day in San Francisco, walking dogs and listening to my favorite broadcast duo. Love you, Ron and Tina. You both do such a fabulous job. Thank you so much for that, Nancy. That is awesome. We appreciate that so very much. And Teresa, we got the super sticker from Teresa. Thank you for that, Teresa. We love the super stickers.
I know those.
Thank you guys so much for your support today.
Why would I put the super stickers on the screen? StreamYard should allow us to. It's the thumbs up.
Yeah, well, they let you show like the emojis and things. Like I know like the pear emojis are popular. I love those. So thank you, Robin Bennett.
It
thank
looks
you,
like
Tony
I'm
D.
smashing the like button.
Smash the like button. And guys, if you are able, please do join statuscoup.com/join. For $5 a month, you can become a member. And when you're a member of Status Coup, you are funding independent journalism. You are funding Status Lou going out on the beat, Tina going out on the beat, Jordan going out on the beat. Who else goes out on the beat? John Farina. I mean, the big long list of people who go out on the beat to bring us the stories. A lot of the footage we had from the nurses' strike this week was from John Farina, who was able to be there. A lot of the election footage we had was from Status Lou. Tina, does undercover stuff with right-wing militias and white supremacy groups, and she goes to their hate rallies, whatever you want to call them. I mean, what do you call them?
Fair.
They're just hate rallies because it's like, what are they protesting? Like, we're protesting.
Do you want the list?
No, probably
nothing
not,
worth.
I
nothing
know.
real.
we'll call them what they are, hate rallies. But yeah, you're supporting people going on the beat. What's up, Chris Garrett?
Like positive rallies too. I mean, come on now. I'm going to be there Saturday for the BLM.
Yes, and she does positive rallies. It's not all hate and Hitler porn. Didn't mean to oversimplify your coverage there, Tina. But yeah, she covers the happier stuff. Although, I mean, yeah, this isn't happy by any means, but it is a positive message rally as opposed to a hate rally. It's certainly not positive in the sense that somebody was murdered, but yeah, you guys know what I meant there. Chris Garrett, late to the chat, but good show. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you,
Always
Chris.
good to see you. Thank you for your continued support. So thank you, Robin. Thank you, Tony D. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Chris. And thank you to all of you who support this show. It means the world and then some. You can check out all my tour dates at ronplacone.com. And Tina, let us know what we can expect here with Right Wing Insanity.
Yeah, stick around, please. I have a very special guest today. His name is Christopher Goldsmith. Christopher is a founder of an organization called Task Force Butler. He's an ex-combat veteran that goes undercover and infiltrates neo-Nazi organizations to bring them down from the inside. His work has been featured in all kinds of major publications, from the Washington Post to NBC News. And so he's going to join me for the next hour and talk about some of the things that he's been involved in and why he does what he does. He identifies as being part of the anti-fascist movement. He talks about that and how it's entirely compatible with being a part of the military and whatnot. So he's a very interesting guy. Please stick around and hear what he has to say. I'm Tina-Desiree Berg, reporting for Status Coup News. This week on the Right Wing Insanity Report, we have a great guest. His name is Christopher Goldsmith, and he is an ex-combat veteran that works at exposing right-wing extremists and helping take down Nazis. He is the founder of a couple of organizations. One is Task Force Butler. They sort of look at themselves as Nazi hunters and whatnot. So, Chris, welcome to the show. Very excited to be talking with you today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So right off the bat, I want to talk about Task Force Butler. So this is your group where you guys hunt out, look for Nazis, neo-Nazis, right-wing extremists. You've had a lot of wins with that. One of your taglines is reclaiming patriotism, which I think makes sense as a veteran. Oftentimes these extremists see themselves as patriot, but what the things they do and say, the fascism that they promote, are really not in line with American values. So talk us through how you decided to form this organization and some of your big wins.
Yeah, so Task Force Butler Institute was inspired by Major General, Marine Corps Major General Smedley Butler, who, if you know anything about his history, you might know about his anti-war work, but he also helped to foil an attempted coup in the United States. The way that he did that was when a bunch of wealthy businessmen came up to him and asked him to lead veterans as part of a coup, literally to storm Congress. Wow. He basically grabbed a reporter, took notes, and had a witness there and brought everything to Congress. And we are very much doing the same type of thing. When January 6th happened, I was an intelligence analyst working for a private company. And I was watching, violence occur as I knew it was going to. And I found myself in a position where I was writing reports for someone else, and I couldn't bring them to the public because of an NDA. And I wanted to never end up in that position again. So Task Force Butler Institute is an organization that researches extremists who are trying to sabotage our democracy. We document them, we expose them. Doesn't mean that we dox people, right? I'm not going to post anyone's phone number or address online, but I will put a phone number and address in a dossier that I'll give to law enforcement, to journalists, and to other researchers.
Right, which makes sense. Let's talk about Major General Butler, because that period of time, this is right around World War II, maybe 1934, 1935. I think a lot of folks don't realize that this is not our first time at this rodeo, so to speak. We had a really big problem with fascism at that point in time. You had the German Bund, you had Christian Front, which is an extreme religious right organization, and they were all looking towards staging a coup. Like, this was a real thing that happened, and it doesn't get that much attention. Do you know much about that beyond what you already told us?
Yeah, so it's, I wish I could, if I had my book, I'm working remotely. If I had my bookshelf, I have the book right on my desk at home.
Oh, right on.
It's not hard to find the book about Smedley Butler. But yeah, he's an interesting man. He's a man of contradictions. He had a bunch of nicknames. One of them was the Fighting Quaker, right? Quakers are supposed to be nonviolent peace activists, that is literally like their religion. But he was, quite an effective combat Marine. And, there you go. Gangsters of Capitalism is the name of the book. So he described his military career as having been a gangster of capitalism. And after he got out, he worked on kind of a personal journey to bring more good into the world, leveraging his military experience, his status as a well-respected veteran. And he has inspired us to do much of the same. None of us are generals. None of us are big shots and famous the way that he was back then. But we're part of a growing movement, right? I'm just the face of it. It's for security reasons, most of our team remains anonymous. But it's a growing cadre of veterans around the country who are concerned about our democracy, and not just these fascist movements that we see it literally assaulting the Capitol in D.C., right. But the Proud Boys chapters, the Patriot Front, the NSC 131, all these explicitly self-described fascist gangs that are becoming more locally focused. We right. are not meeting them in the street, right? Like I dress like this, right? I'm like tattooed vet, got a beard, looking like a boogaloo type. I can walk up to these people on the street and they think I'm one of them, right. which is why I look like this, right? We will not strap on armor or carry guns or get in confrontations with these people. There are other activists who, that's their place to do that. Right. We're strictly abiding by the law, sometimes working with law enforcement when it's advantageous to the situation. We're all about meticulously taking and conserving evidence so that it can be used in the court of law, whether that's a criminal case or a civil case for a community that is on behalf of a community that has been done damage.
Right. So let's talk about that for a second. Most of the neo-Nazis or fascists that have been arrested, I don't know if people realize this, are generally taken down not over hate crimes and things of this nature. It's generally over dealing guns illegally, sometimes drugs. So there are other methods of taking fascists off the chessboard, so to speak. So have you been involved in investigating any of those types of crimes with these guys? Or if you can't say, that's okay.
Yeah, so we do not ignore any criminal activity, and we will leverage any evidence of any criminal activity that we can to get people taken off of the chessboard. One of the things that we are trying to go after Patriot Front with is every time that they commit a hate crime, whether that's property destruction or a violent hate crime, like they assaulted a black man on 4th of July last year in Boston, and a year prior, 4th of July, assaulted a black man in Philadelphia. We wrote a report, it's called Project Blacklisted. We made it available to law enforcement, to elected officials, to other journalists and researchers. And we, because we've infiltrated this organization, and I have before Task Force Butler existed for years, we've been doing this. We understand the culture, we understand the language, we understand the tactics, techniques, and procedures that they use to go out and plan to commit hate crimes, right? Conspiracy is a crime. And when you have a bunch of white supremacists traveling across state lines, engaging in interstate commerce as part of the mission of committing those hate crimes. Like that is enough for the feds to start moving. Now, they haven't yet, to my knowledge, but hopefully with enough public pressure, we can force the FBI to do the right thing and take down this fascist gang.
Right. No, I mean, we interviewed Mike German a few weeks back. He was an ex-undercover FBI agent that was infiltrated right-wing supremacy organizations back in the 90s. And it was interesting to me that he said not every time they were able to get folks, it was generally on gun charges.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
One of the most telling things, not just for white supremacists, but for the whole gamut of far-right extremists, is they're often committing domestic violence, either against a partner or their children, before they ever lash out in violence to anyone on the outside, be that in a street fight as the Proud Boys do, or assaulting the Capitol. Domestic violence is like the number one warning sign for an extremist.
Wow. I didn't know that. Interesting. But it checks. That makes perfect sense to me. Individuals are definitely angry and prone to violence. Let's talk about how right-wing extremists oftentimes do have a military background. Is it because, in your opinion, having had the experience on both sides of this debate, do you think it's because they're more prone to being sucked into these groups and their propaganda and going down that rabbit hole? Or is it because they are maybe missing something else in their life and they're open to becoming part of a group that gives them brotherhood? What are your thoughts behind that? Because there are a lot of right-wing extremists, whether it's the military groups such as the Oath Keepers, whether it's neo-Nazi groups like Hammerskin Nation, whatnot. I mean, a lot of these guys do have a military background.
Yeah, so I have not seen any convincing evidence, and I'm talking about like peer-reviewed studies that that say that veterans or more service members and veterans are more likely to join extremist organizations or be attracted to extremist organizations than the average person.
Okay.
The thing that makes veterans stand out in extremism is the same thing that makes us stand out in society. When a veteran goes to college, a veteran's more likely A, to graduate, and B, to graduate with a higher
with honors.
GPA.
That's true. Yes.
They're more likely to start a business. We're more likely to be community leaders. And that doesn't mean just getting elected. That means, coaching soccer or being a Girl Scout troop leader, right? So whether it's Russian disinformation like the Russian IRA or the Republican Party or the extreme right, they're targeting veterans all for the same reason. And that's because of our social capital. And it's not just because of our training, our training for violence is like the obvious one, but our leadership training, our small unit training, our everything that we do in the military for training is designed to train the trainer so that once you've done it a bunch of times, you can train the next person, right? That type of community in training is essential to these fringe extremist organizations, because a lot of the times their leadership gets taken out and they want to build something that's perpetual. So, it's a common misconception that veterans are more likely to be extremists, and things like January 6th kind of reinforce that, because the initial spurt of arrests, a bunch of veterans got arrested. Now, why was it the veterans who got arrested?
And also police officers. I mean, it wasn't just veterans. But you're right about the social capital. That makes perfect sense.
So, and that ratio, was extremely high of the number of the percentage of veterans among those who were arrested, right? That has kind of gone closer to the average when accounting for age and sex.
Interesting.
But why were the veterans arrested first? Because they were at the center of the conspiracy. They were at the tip of the spear of the violence. And organizations like the Oath Keepers were founded entirely to target and radicalize veterans, right? They weren't trying to radicalize just Americans broadly, right? That organization's mission was to target veterans and to use their social capital, not just their military training, but their social capital, so that it would build legitimacy for this anti-government, this fascist movement.
Right. That actually makes perfect sense to me. It kind of jives with this idea that a lot of these groups want to, they want to get involved in a race war, so to speak. So they take military training. Active clubs are obviously a big thing that's happening right now with the boxing. They seek out guys that have that ability because they think they put a prize on it, right? So it makes sense to me that they would target anybody in the military. Recently here in California, I covered an event that happened in San Diego between the Rise Above movement guys and Patriot Front. They had set up a boxing ring and had a boxing match. So that's something that's spreading too. I think you're right. And I think the social capital is really a clear, obvious thing. Everybody wants the vets on their side, right? They're our country's heroes. So it makes sense that if we can get more of these guys in our ranks, we could say, but we're all vets. How are we fascists? We are patriots. So that makes sense. Thank you for that explanation. So do you think it's compatible then to be part of the anti-fascist movement per se, and also be part of law enforcement or the military? I think historically speaking, I would say the United States military is anti-fascist. The reason we fought World War II was against fascism, right? So, but I think that these terms have sort of, taken on strange meanings in our current environment, right? So recently we had an Antifa list that was put on Telegram by a bunch of right-wing groups, and they had the FBI and the CIA on there, which was like, the CIA's Antifa? Are you kidding me? What are your thoughts on that?
So my grandmother's brother, who died in France fighting Nazis, was an anti-fascist, and so was every American who was with him. The original anti-fascists are Allied troops, American troops, wearing the stars and stripes on their sleeve. So anti-fascism is supposed to be the standard way of life for American troops. We literally fought a gigantic war over this, and we won. So, a lot of folks think that anti-fascism is incompatible with military service. Well, okay, militant anti-fascism, violent anti-fascism, yes, that does break the rules, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, but the type of research that my team is doing, we don't break the law. We are open source intelligence researchers. We are not committing fraud. We are not, breaking into private networks or violating the law in any way. It's completely above board. So, we welcome all veterans to join our team. Now, that being said, we're a shoestring organization. We can't train everybody. We are growing extremely slowly because, I'm basically paying for all of this operation out of pocket at the moment. So we can't take a bunch of new trainees, but that is the goal. Hopefully we get the funding to rapidly expand so that we can start building distributed networks of anti-fascist veterans around the country.
Excellent. Let me ask you this. Do you do any work de-radicalizing vets that might have been sucked down some of these rabbit holes? I know that that's an area that some folks work in as well.
Yeah. That's a job for psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers. It is a tremendous amount of resources, human, financial, and otherwise, that goes into de-radicalizing one person. I would rather infiltrate a neo-Nazi organization, make them paranoid about the plant inside of it, and break them up so that they stop radicalizing other people. I think that's a better use of my time and resources. But again, I'm not a doctor. If I were a doctor,
right,
maybe that would be my thing. But our organization is focused entirely on creating disincentives for the fascist way of life. You are free. Your First Amendment, you can be and you can be a racist. You can say racist things. We are just trying to make sure that we use our First Amendment right to make you pay for those racist and fascist ideas. It's not hurting anyone, right? We're not, again, right. We're not violating any laws. We're just making sure that if you want to be a fascist, everyone knows you're a fascist. If you want to embrace that racist way of life, we're going to help you embrace that racist way of life until you say enough and you give it up.
Right. So let's talk about that process. I know one of the groups you infiltrated was the Aryan Freedom Network. I believe is out of Texas. So let's talk about how that happens. So you create, I guess, a fake Telegram account. You go undercover into these rooms. You get to talk with them. They do vetting processes. I know I've experienced firsthand. Sometimes they do like show me a photo of your arm that you're white. But to really take that to the next level, it requires, meeting up with these guys with either a video conference thing or in person, whatnot. Sometimes I've seen them in the chats. They'll say, like, meet me at this fast food restaurant and I'll take you through this questionnaire and we'll see if you can become a member, kind of a thing. So you've gone through that. You've been able to bust up some of these groups that way. Can you walk us through what that entails, what that's like, and some of the outcomes you've had?
Yeah, so most of these fascist organizations, whether it's Patriot Front, these active clubs, the Proud Boys, the Aryan Freedom Network, they all immerse themselves in the same exact propaganda. So if you're in one of those channels, you're going to be presented with opportunities to join other ones, and B, you get to learn their lingo and their belief system. And as someone who's been immersed in this stuff for years now, it's pretty easy for me to switch on and, like, again, bald head, blue eyes, big beard, Hawaiian shirt, tattoos. I blend in with these people, and they're not watching me on MSNBC. They're not watching me on this show, right? So even though I'm like very public about my work, these people don't do research. They're constantly looking out for Antifa is going to get us. Well, I walk right into their conference and they have no idea.
Wow, that's amazing. So talk us about the Aryan Freedom Network, though. I believe you got it. So you had flown a drone to get over their property. I guess they have a compound down there in Texas, and you were able to identify vehicles and whatnot. And then ultimately, one of the members tried to sue you. What was that about?
Yeah, so the Aryan Freedom Network invited me as a member to join their what they call the White Unity Conference, and they were advertising it as down in Dallas, Texas. So anti-fascists, around the country who were tapped into this network, were basically going out and saying, "Hey, heads up, Dallas! There's going to be a fascist gathering in your neighborhood." So I went ahead with my team, and we had multiple team members join the Aryan Freedom Network. We flew down to Texas. We rented a couple of vehicles, used one as our mobile headquarters. And when they said, "Hey, we're actually not in Dallas, we're in DeKalb," we took our RV and we just drove right up there. And they said, "Meet us at this air pump at this very specific gas station in this basically like one road town where if you're looking for a Nazi conference, you're going to find it because there's only one road." And so
wouldn't be hard to miss.
They're not, giant Confederate flag, 50 cars on the lawn. Like, come on, guys. Like, they go out of their way to hide. So I parked my RV on top of their meeting spot and just had my team with cameras, in multiple vehicles, multiple angles. And NBC's investigations team was also there. We didn't actually know that NBC's investigations team was there.
They were there undercover? Interesting.
We thought they missed the mark, and we were all like nervous. We had planned this for months to try and get them in. They did a great job, and their footage is far better than ours because they're professionals. But yeah, we were sitting. I literally parked on the meeting spot. We just sat there and took pictures of faces and license plates and cars.
Wow.
And then when it came time for their, little convoy to line up, super obvious, and all turn the same way out of this gas station, drive straight down the road and make a left into a driveway. It wasn't hard for us to figure out, like, oh, okay, your Nazi conference is on the same road as the secret meetup point. So then we flew around for a while.
The master race isn't bright.
Yeah. They're so we flew around for a while. We gathered as much intelligence as we could. We took a break for 5 hours, got some lunch, and then came back. And then we wanted to let them know that we were watching. So we flew the drone, not low, very high above this guy's property. and let them know that they were being watched. And they were very upset about it. The young ones, you could see, who probably hadn't been identified before, went and ran towards the forest. It was quite comical. It was good. So I'm trying not to laugh through this. So
I know, right?
So we've got the drone footage. The drone is a tiny little thing. It's a little itty bitty micro drone, just flying above them, and they're mean mugging it, looking like they're going to stare it out of the sky or something. Hung out for another hour above their heads, and they couldn't figure out that we were just right next to them. Yeah, we were like in a car right next to them. They had no clue.
It's very funny. No, I've been in similar situations where I've actually been in private chats where they're mentioning me by name, like, how did this journalist know where? And I'm like, I'm in your chat room. It's very funny. So I also wanted to point out, I saw some of that drone footage. It looked like there was a wood pile that was in the shape of a swastika. Yeah. Also a dead giveaway.
Yeah. I mean, like, had the drone just been, looking for them, had we not seen them just drive down the only road and pull into the house with the giant Confederate flag and 50 cars on the lawn, like, had we not found that, like, seeing the swastika from the air, which was huge,
huge.
It's one of those things that they like burn it, like they burn a cross kind of thing at the end of the night, because that's what they get off on. It was like, it was really easy for us to show NBC and be like, yes, like, these are definitely the Nazis. Here, look on this, video right here. That's the swastika in their backyard. So we that was on a Saturday in late October, I believe. And by Monday, Henry Dalton Stout, who I believe is the founder, if not the leader, of the Aryan Freedom Network and the property owner, sued me for invasion on seclusion and trespassing. You don't own the air above your house. I mean, no. Delta flies a plane above me. Now I'm going to sue Delta. Like, that's the dumbest thing ever. No. And they were in an open field in Texas. There's no seclusion.
Like, there's no seclusion or privacy protection. Yeah.
So
if they'd been inside a house, they might have had a complaint, but no, not in the field.
Yeah.
They just got busted being Nazis.
Yeah. So the guy who filed the suit, though, the lawyer, he's a guy named Jason Lee Van Dyke, who's been on our radar forever. He's the guy who actually filed.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Proud Boy.
So he's the guy who filed the paperwork to make Proud Boys International LLC a legal entity, right? So he's the first chairman of the Proud Boys. He's a practicing lawyer in Texas who drives a silver Honda Ridgeline, which is the least popular pickup truck on the planet because it's ugly and it's stupid. Guess what we saw in the video? Silver Honda Ridgeline. So he was there with his Nazi buddies, and he thought it was a good idea. Like, I'm going to file this right away. Like, how did you get to writing so fast, Jason? Are you a Nazi?
Yeah.
Are you hanging out with the Nazis? You can try and deny it, but we've got the footage.
That's right. They all try to deny it, but there's so much crossover there. And then Jason went after some folks up in, I believe it was Arizona, where he had been sending Proud Boys to this guy's residence, threatening him. Yeah, he's an angry, violent guy. I think he got chased out of the Proud Boys, though, because even he went too far for them. But having said that, I do think there is a lot of crossover that I've seen between Proud Boys and neo-Nazi organizations. This idea that they're not racist is absurd. That's a great story. Go ahead.
So Jason also hosted Patriot Front and their leader, Thomas Rousseau, at his house for Thanksgiving, like a Thanksgiving-themed dinner that was prior to Thanksgiving. So if press asks him, hey, did you have them over for Thanksgiving? He says, no, I had my mom over for Thanksgiving. Well, Patriot Front posted videos of your backyard. So
yeah, there you go. Interesting. Let's talk about Patriot Front.
Two Nazi organizations in a month.
That's two, yeah.
It's more than a coincidence.
That's right. So Thomas Rousseau, he was originally with a group called Vanguard America that had been one of the predominant players at the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally. kind of got destroyed after Seville, but he came out and reformed Patriot Front, which is, I would say, probably the largest of all of the neo-fascist organizations in America right now. Oftentimes, though, a lot of the other neo-Nazi groups kind of point out Patriot Front and say that they're feds, that they're federal agents, and that it's a plant, which I think is kind of bizarre. It's obviously not the case that that's true. But that had been some of the conspiracies surrounding it from other Aryan groups. Why do you think that is?
So I embrace those conspiracy theories. I think it's great that all the MAGA Republicans think that they're feds. In fact, sure, okay, I believe that. Like, that's fine, cool. Like,
I got you.
Patriot Fronts are they're a bunch of feds.
It's Discord, right? Okay.
I've been a member of Patriot Front 3 times. Like, so if they're worried about plants,
so you were you in the Unicorn Riot leaked Discords? Were you in those chats?
No. Well, I was. My name
as your fake account. I mean, yeah.
No,
okay.
No.
Oh, but your actual name was as
discussions of me were in the Unicorn Riot League, but not me myself.
Okay, because I think you infiltrated Patriot Front as well. So what was the story behind that?
So a buddy of mine who I served in the Army with, who is every time he calls me, my life goes off in a crazy direction. Long story short, he called me and said, "Hey, Goldie, I infiltrated a neo-Nazi organization. I want you to help me take them down." There's no pre-discussion to this. We hadn't talked in months, if not years. And that was it. And now I'm a professional Nazi hunter.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's funny.
Those
are the best kind of friends.
Really abbreviated, but that's it. Yeah, a buddy I served with was concerned enough with the Nazis in his neighborhood that he infiltrated this organization, reached out to me. Now, in my prior life, I was a veteran advocate. I was working on Capitol Hill for a major veteran service organization. So, like, people see pictures of folks like me at the White House, or shaking hands with someone like the now deceased Senator McCain, and they make lots of assumptions about things that we can do.
Right.
He was thinking I would just call up the FBI or my buddy Senator McCain and be like, "Hey, there's a neo-Nazi organization. We've got a list of all the members. This is where they live.
Here you go. Go arrest them. Yeah.
Here you go. Go arrest them." That's not the way these things work. So instead, we documented pretty religiously, like, every bit of evidence that we could. We handed it over to BuzzFeed, and then BuzzFeed published the inside scoop of what Patriot Front is, how they've painted Vanguard America, the explicitly fascist, with the faces on it, fascist organization, in red, white, and blue, and they try to deny, oh, we're a new organization. No, we're not. Tom Rousseau, was the leader of Vanguard America. Heather Heyer was murdered by a member of Vanguard America. And then he painted everything in red, white, and blue. It's the same organization. It's not different.
Not different at all. I agree with you. It is very similar crossover, obviously. I just think that there was so much toxic stuff attached to Seville that a lot of these organizations had to rebrand or just, go underground for a while. So I want to talk about your other group, Sparvarius.
Yep.
So this is your consulting firm that it was also instrumental in exposing Patriot Front, but other organizations as well. But I think your main focus there is right-wing militia groups. Is that correct?
So Sparvarius is a consulting firm that I launched. I launched that before Task Force Butler. After January 6th, because I never wanted to be in a position where I was writing intelligence reports for someone else that would get buried. Instead, I wanted to be able to bring them to the public when necessary. So I still have clients that, I have to keep their work secret, but they're all nonprofits, and they publish their research for the good of the world. And one of the things that came out of Sparvarius was every time that I ended up on TV or in a newspaper clip talking about my work of being an anti-fascist veteran who's using open source intelligence research, I would have veterans hit me up on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, basically saying, like, "Hey, put me in, coach. Like, how can I help?" And ethically, I couldn't use my business to engage volunteers, and I don't have money to pay anybody. So me and a couple of my colleagues created this nonprofit Task Force Butler Institute so that we can slowly, again, we don't have any money yet. We can slowly train other veterans to safely perform open source intelligence research, to hold fascists accountable, and to impose costs on fascists and racists, in their their region, their city, their state, and nationally.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about the tactics that you folks use. Sowing discord, I think, is an obvious one. What are some examples of that?
Well, the fact that I've infiltrated Patriot Front 3 times, that has made a lot of their potential recruits think twice about whether or not they want to go down that way of life, because I'm not the only infiltrator of Patriot Front, right? People do it regularly.
Right.
There are anti-fascists, anonymous anti-fascists, who I don't know, love to work with though, who infiltrated as a hobby to keep their community safe. I can guarantee if you join an organization like Patriot Front, an anti-fascist is already in that group. They will find out who you are in
100%,
real life.
yeah.
And it may take a week, may take 2 years. Eventually, you're going to be exposed, and it's going to get expensive. You're probably going to lose your close relationships. You're probably going to lose your job. When you lose your job, you start to lose a lot of other things: your car, your house, your security, right? So, our sowing of discord is primarily by showing our work, showing the public, either directly or through journalists, publishing pieces about our work, that we're not, exaggerating about what we do. We are physically present. It's not just online. We're physically present, and we're gathering evidence in real time, and we're meticulous about it, right? We don't dox people. Everything that we put out in public gets vetted first, goes through journalists. Who have
so it's double
editors
checked,
that they have to go pay.
Right. And law and legal counsel that looks at it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting because so much of the work that's done behind the scenes of a lot of this publications on publication of articles on right-wing extremism does come from anti-fascist researchers. I'm thinking back also to the start of the White Lives Matter movement when that first started taking off on Telegram. Some anti-fascists formed some fake WLM chapters. You probably saw this.
Catfishing that I have ever seen.
It was pretty funny.
Good.
It was so good. So for folks that don't know what we're talking about, basically they set up these fake Telegram chat rooms and said that they were the new White Lives Matter chapter for, Montana, Arizona, California, whatever it was. And after people started joining and chatting and sharing their information, you log in one day and it says, this has been an anti-fascist action. We know who you are. Mm-hmm. Blah, blah, blah. And I had been in a couple of those rooms. I just laughed so hard. I was like, that's good.
Yep.
So those guys all started freaking out a little bit. So I think, my thing is this. I understand making these guys uncomfortable in their skin, making them uncomfortable to go out into the world and say hateful things, commit acts of violence, whatnot. That's a very effective tool to slow down the spread of fascism, which is obviously a problem currently. But these guys want to complain about, well, that's my free speech. And my thing is this, it's like, you guys, it's not that you're into free speech. You just want to be able to say what you want to say without having any consequences to it. So it's only free speech for you and not anybody else. Because free speech means that everybody that's against what you're doing also has that same freedom and gets to use it to, criticize you. So how did they get to this place where they're such snowflakes? They just I want a safe space to say these hateful things. You don't get to tell me I can't do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The preeminent example is Jason Lee Van Dyke, this still practicing lawyer in Texas
which is remarkable, honestly.
Went and hung out at a neo-Nazi conference and then sued a veterans organization for, doing First Amendment protected, journalism is the only thing, the only occupation that is protected explicitly in the Constitution,
Yeah.
right? And we aren't journalists, but we do collect information and provide it to journalists. And for Jason Lee Van Dyke to want to be able to go out and shout racist slurs and not face any consequences, well, I just want to help you get your voice out there. I'm not making anything up. I'm just recording.
Right.
I just want to help you share your First Amendment right. Right? What's wrong with that? I don't know why this.
Well,
this
but
guy
that's
thought
exactly
it.
it. What is wrong with it? Why don't they see that? They must see that there's something wrong with these viewpoints. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so afraid of being public about them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's it's.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Every accusation for these fascists is an admission, right? When they say they're persecuted. Their their freedom of speech is being squelched. It's like these people are disconnected from reality and they are projecting.
They are. No, they 100% are. It's almost like when I've done some reporting on some of these things, and you're right, you tell it just like it is. I don't have to editorialize the problem here because it's obvious to anybody that's not involved in these movements. But the guys in the movements, they get upset because they're like, what do you mean everybody doesn't see this as glory? But what we're doing is like patriotism. It's glory. But that is their worldview that they've been sucked into. It's not reality, and it's certainly not how most Americans view them. And I think that's kind of a shock to them in a way.
Yeah. It's strange that they are so disconnected, that they've got this like dueling personality where they recognize what they're doing is inherently wrong and disgusting, objectively wrong. But they also, want to be proud of it as they hide their faces and yell about people with masks, right? There are so many contradictions in this way of life. And I try to encourage their behavior. Like if they want to join an active club, they can meet a nice military veteran who is a combatives instructor who's going to beat the hell out of them and call it training. And then their information is going to go to people like me. So yeah, I encourage those folks. Go ahead, join your active club. Go meet a former military combatives trainer who's going to give you a bunch of concussions and then is going to ruin your life. I know, you're asking for it.
So good. You're right. So let's talk about active clubs for a minute, because I think your average American has absolutely no clue what that is. Mm-hmm. So the origin of these active clubs, I would say, is Rise Above movement. This is the neo-fascist Nazi organization that was started here in California by one Robert Rundo and a handful of other people. He has now fled the country. I think he's in Serbia or Bosnia or something. Mm-hmm. There was a bench warrant out for his arrest for some crimes he committed here. But he kind of put this idea out there, I want to say starting in about 2017, where, it was combining elements of fitness, boxing, staying in shape, with elements of neo-Nazism, fascism. So he married these things together. So now these things are cropping up like weeds across the country. It seems like every small town has an active club now, and it's basically a neo-Nazi group that beats each other up. I mean, for lack of another way to describe it. What are your thoughts on that? Because it does seem kind of strange that has taken hold so greatly and has become such a great marketing tool for these guys.
Yeah, so part of the reason for the sudden proliferation of these active clubs is after January 6th, the fascist organizations, be it the Proud Boys or anyone else, recognize that if they have a hierarchical leadership structure, they're screwed when the top guy gets arrested, sends them into disarray.
Right.
So Rundo and a lot of similar fascist leaders and influencers and podcasters have really pushed this idea of focusing local, and they're using the same tactics as the Republican Party with these getting people voted onto school boards, and often there's a lot of crossover. Like in Miami, a bunch of Proud Boys are now on the Republican committee for the, I guess, city or county down there. So this semi-autonomous cell thing allows them to go and have a centralized ideology, a unified aesthetic. Right, so we've got the black and white for the active clubs. We've got the red or the yellow and black for the Proud Boys. Right, So they've got the same general ideology, but if you take out, the leader, if police take out the leader or a community imposes costs on the leader of one of those organizations, now instead of taking out the entire nationwide or global organization, they're just taking out the little guys. Now, what they don't recognize is that every time they purchase something from Robert Rundo, who's an overseas fugitive, and they use those stickers, or, from Tommy Rousseau down in Texas with Patriot Front, when they make those purchases of those propaganda, of those stickers, well, they're funding terrorism. And in the case of Rundo, that's international. So they think that they're like, oh, you can't get us. Well, guess what? Everybody has bank accounts. Your crypto wallets can be traced. And every single one of you who've ever paid for a sticker can be found by law enforcement. And when you are materially supporting terrorism, that's a serious charge. And when there's a paper trail or a digital paper trail, the evidence is solid. It doesn't take much more than that to wrap up, potentially hundreds of people at once. So I'm excited about their sticker pyramid scheme.
Their merchandising,
still got Rundo and Thomas at the top, and little tentacles that go through everybody in the network. So,
that's true.
I encourage them, keep buying stickers. Go ahead. We'll keep documenting
exactly.
it. It's not just wire fraud. It's mail fraud. It's material support for terrorism. Talking about major charges. And if you're a 21-year-old who's like, I'm a loser, I want to hang out with guys and punch each other in the head and put stickers up. Okay, go ahead, do that. Get 30 years. That's cool.
Exactly. So I want to talk a little bit about how they're really super hyper focused right now on homophobic issues, trans individuals. This seems to be the rallying cry that they're all getting behind all of a sudden. Why do you think that happened? Because in the past, this was not really a thing for fascists to focus on, but now they're laser focused on it.
Mm-hmm. So there's a guy named Christopher Rufo, who Governor DeSantis just put onto the college board or something like that. Now he's a right-wing activist who is officially involved in Florida's education system in some way. So Christopher Rufo is a guy whose sole purpose for his career is to come up with ideas of how to take something good and paint it as something bad. He was the one who popularized the term, what was it? Oh, I'm blanking. This is terrible.
That's all right. It happens to me all the time. It's an anti-trans thing?
No, the criminal justice thing, the critical race theory, CRT, right?
Oh, so, critical race theory. Okay, I got
Christopher Rufo is the guy who popularized CRT and reduced it down to it's the Fox News boogeyman, right? So that is how White Lives Matter last summer became suddenly in college boardrooms, having members of White Lives Matter recruiting, other Proud Boys and other fascists and growing that organization, right? So this summer, groomer became the slur. It became the, the far right rallying cry. And guys like Governor DeSantis have also embraced that kind of thing, have started spreading a lie about how the LGBT community is doing bad things, right? They have used these cultural touch points as triggers to radicalize people who identify as conservatives, who are brainless Fox News watchers, and who are very easy to get into the conservative to fascist pipeline. And when you have somebody like Ron DeSantis, who's now the most popular figure on Fox News, is very likely going to get the presidential nomination for the Republican Party in 24.
Yeah, I think you're right.
This is a really dangerous thing. So this is stochastic terrorism. This is something that folks like Chaya Reichik, the Libs of TikTok user on Twitter, they are trying to build a movement to monetize it. It's always a pyramid scheme, whether it's Tommy Rousseau or it's Rundo overseas or it's Reichik. they all want you to buy their stickers and their T-shirts because that's how they want to make money. And making people afraid by lying to them gets people to vote. You know, whether that's we're afraid of a foreign enemy, so we're going to vote for the pro-war candidate, or we're afraid of crime, so we vote for the tough on crime person. Well, if they think that their kids are being targeted or something like that, or their kids are being brainwashed, they're going to respond, with every bit of hate and vitriol.
So it's interesting. So they're almost using it as a red pilling mechanism to kind of get the normie conservatives onto the fascist pipeline. And I think it has been effective. Wildly, though, what I find really disturbing about the whole thing is that, and this is probably not a well-known thing, but there have been a lot of neo-Nazis that have been dealing in child porn. Like one of the guys from Attawaffen had child porn in his computer, one from the base. The Zoomer guy from not TPUSA, but the other American First.
America First.
He had he had child porn on his phone. So it's almost like you were saying earlier, how every criticism they lob is really just telling on themselves in a way, right? I mean, because this is hardcore stuff that's really disturbing. So let me ask you this. What group out there do you think is the scariest, most capable of doing something disturbing coming up? Like if we are to monitor somebody or be concerned about somebody, who do you think that group is?
So the ones who are most capable of damages are, and violence, the ones who are most capable of creating conditions of violence are not like the Proud Boys or the Patriot Front or anyone like that. It's really Fox News. In Fox News and Newsmax and the rest of those are the reason why there was an insurrection at the Capitol. I mean, that was very close to being a successful coup. So the most dangerous group out there are conservative media outlets. And that includes, all of these podcasters and fringe figures who, well, they're not fringe. I mean, Bannon is one of the most popular people on the right in terms of building an audience. Charlie Kirk.
Right.
Charlie Kirk bussed people to D.C. He's one of these people. Charlie Kirk has been part of he is a groomer, right? He created an organization for kids to radicalize them into conservative ideals that have nothing to do with conservatism, but everything with violence against the LGBT community and subjugating women and being afraid of people of different skin tones, right? So people like Charlie Kirk, who have tons of money, who are reaching into the minds of children and who are helping radicalize them into the beginning of the fascist pipeline for these smaller organizations like Patriot Front or active clubs or something like that. It's the Charlie Kirks that are really doing the big damage.
You know what? That's an interesting perspective, and I think there is absolute truth to that. They have a much farther reach, and they are the ones that start sucking them into these ever more increasingly radicalized, rabbit holes that these guys get into, and they keep hearing that stuff over and over. I don't disagree with that. Let me ask you a question, Chris. If people want to support your work, find out more about you, your organizations, where's the best place for them to go?
Taskforcebutler.org. Every dollar counts. We are trying to go from an all volunteer organization that, I'm paying my staff from my company to help me build. We're hitting a point where we've got like a month and a half left, and then none of it works anymore. So, every dollar counts. If you're thinking about, making a big impact, taskforcebutler.org. We've got a couple of donate buttons. You can also read about our work there. You can read about our Project Blacklisted, where we exposed and identified dozens of members of Patriot Front and wrote about how every hate crime is an interstate conspiracy. We wrote about Libs of TikTok and how 50% of the tweets that she makes against a specific individual place, location, like a gay bar, ends up having a real world or online harassment campaign actually metastasize. And you can see the video of when NBC was tagging along, following us as we infiltrated the Aryan Freedom Network. And, as you said before, it resulted in a lawsuit that they dropped. But if you want to make a Nazi cry, donate at taskforcebutler.org, because they hate us more than anybody else.
If you want to make a Nazi cry, that's a great line. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you think is important that we should discuss?
No, I really think that's it. I mean, again, we're a bootstrapping organization, but in the next couple of weeks, we're really trying to get to the point where we can make this sustainable so we can pay our staff what they're worth. What we do is very dangerous. The real world effects of this can be deadly. We need to make sure that we have security for our members. Yeah. So again, if some rich person is watching this and they want to set loose a bunch of American veterans against America's Nazis, we are a turnkey organization, and a big check would do just that.
Yeah. Right on. All right, Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a really interesting conversation, and I really appreciated your insights.
Thank you. It's been great to be on.